A good amount of us have heard of Larry Hoover. He's mentioned in songs, I'm sure his name's mentioned in some movies and TV shows. Most of us know of him and know that he's a major figure in gang criminal culture. He's legendary in that sector, but for most of us normal folk, we don't really know why. So, let's find out. Born in Jackson, Mississippi on November 30th, 1950, Larry Hoover's family moved to Chicago when he was 4. Not much is known about the time in between, but he joined the Supreme Gangsters gang when he was 12 or 13. He started out with small petty crimes and quickly moved on to violent offenses. Being a natural leader, he established himself and was the head of the gang by age 15, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Deeming a kid the most fit to run a criminal organization is just insane. However, they seem to have had some incredible foresight because he was able to grow the gang and gain lots of influence. The gang was involved in deadly wars, most notably with the Black Disciples Nation led by David Barksdale. Tired of the bloodshed, Hoover and Barksdale agreed to a ceasefire and decided to join forces in 1969 and created the Black Gangster Disciples Nation. After the creation of the gang, the BGDN was the top dog and basically dominated the gang scene in Chicago. Barksdale ended up getting shot and Hoover assumed sole leadership of the BGDN. Under Hoover's leadership, the gang took control of Chicago's South Side drug trade. They were bringing in more than $1,000 a day, and it was very lucrative for them. But that eventually brought more problems, because no matter what it is, legit business or criminal empire, there's always someone that wants to take you down and prove themselves to be better. In this case, King Larry was not only fighting rival gangs, but law enforcement. He had been in and out of jail for most of his early 20s, and in 1976, he was charged with the murder of William Pookie Young, along with Andrew Howard. According to the People vs. Hoover document, on February 26, 1973, at approximately 8 p.m., a witness heard a car stop in the alley behind his apartment. The car pulled away after 3 or 4 shots were fired. The witness then saw a body lying in the alley and called the police. The victim, William Young, had been shot 6 times in the head and once in the arm. The state had a witness named Larry Leverston, and he testified that the killing of Young was ordered by Hoover and that he knew because he, Hoover, and Howard were all members of an organization called the Family, and they sold narcotics in the Inglewood area of Chicago. He also said that Larry was the leader of the family and had ordered not only the death of William Young, but also the deaths of Joel Ford, Joshua Shaw, and Tony Tucker for sticking up one of his dope houses. At another meeting after that, Leverston said that Hoover said that they had gotten one of the guys and wanted Joshua Shaw and Tony Tucker killed before the week was out. Leverston also said that they had gotten Young and threw him in the alley around 68th and Low and shot him in the head. During the cross-examination, which is where the opposing side has the opportunity to examine the witness, in this case, it was Hoover's side during the cross-examination, Leverston admitted that he had been recently charged with murder himself, and he was questioned as to whether he was promised a favorable outcome for testifying against Hoover and Howard. Earlier, I mentioned that Joshua Shaw was one of the people that Hoover allegedly put a hit out on. He actually was a witness and testified against Howard and said that Howard was with Young on the day in question, which Howard himself admitted to being with him, but he let him go. Shaw said that Howard told a companion to shoot if Young tried to run. Shaw was eventually killed on September 27, 1973. The trial continued and both Howard and Hoover were sentenced, with Hoover getting 150 to 200 years. Hoover was sent to maximum security Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois. In prison, he offered protection to other inmates and discouraged violence in the facility, causing the number of fights and uprisings to go down. However, he was also still recruiting members for his gang and was in touch with people on the outside, encouraging his members to move up in the world however they could. He even made getting an education mandatory for his followers, telling them to go to school, learn a trade, and develop skills to make them a useful member of the community. He eventually changed the name of the Gangster Disciples to Growth and Development. Instead of promoting violence and crime, they would now promote social causes. They have funded a voter registration organization and opened a music label and donated to needy children. Larry also organized a peaceful protest to protect publicly funded programs, encouraged his members to run for office, and runs a clothing line. He was even rewarded by being moved to a lower secured prison. However, it was revealed that he was secretly running a massive drug ring that had up to 30,000 members in multiple states, selling over $100 million in drugs per year, and the nonprofits were fronts for laundering the drug money, or racketeering. During his sudden 180 behavior, there were some officials that were suspicious and didn't buy his good act. There was a 5-year investigation where they pulled out all the stops, and in 1995 there was a massive raid on the GDs that led to the arrest of 22 members, including more charges brought to Hoover. It was called Operation Headache, and it was carried out by over 250 federal, state, and local officials. They They wiretapped Hoover in prison, looked for potential informants, and searched all offices linked to the GDs. U.S. Attorney General Barnes said, "We have taken off the top echelon and we have bitten off the head of the snake. This has been going on for 25 years and we needed to attack at the top. This organization is going to be greatly crippled now." After being indicted, he was moved to a Chicago facility to await trial, where he was eventually convicted of all charges and given additional life sentences on top of the 150 to 200 years he was originally given. He was moved to Supermax Prison ADX Florence in Chicago. This particular prison houses some of the most notorious criminals like El Chapo and the Unabomber. There are currently ongoing efforts to free Larry Hoover, and he has lots of people who feel he served his time and his sentencing in general was overkill. I can agree with over 100 years being just dumb when you can literally just save life without the possibility of parole. I personally don't have a side of whether he should be free or not. All of his crimes literally happened before I was born, but this whole thing is just really unfortunate. Larry Hoover is someone who really could have made a positive difference in the community if he had used his talents for the right thing. I think the power of persuasion that he had is one of the reasons why they went after him the way that they did. We all know the 60s and 70s were huge for Black leaders. They were bringing all people together left and right. Just look at what he did in prison. He recruited more people and had them turning their lives around. He even convinced some of the guards that he should be free. And I don't know if you guys know who David Barksdale was, but the merger between him and Hoover was a huge deal. Barksdale had changed the direction of his gang and was involved in civil rights marching with MLK. And him and Hoover working together could have brought about so much change if he hadn't been shot. So thinking about it from that angle completely changes the perspective of why they pursued Hoover the way that they did. Especially when you think about how Barksdale was allegedly shot by a rival gang that had already agreed to a truce. He was a visionary and Hoover was the one who could convince people to follow them. They could have been a positive dynamic duo, but Hoover just didn't make the best decisions. I want to end on this note here. For those of you who think it's cool to be in and out of jail because you're seemingly getting away with it, you are not. They are letting you go on purpose because they know that your arrogance will build and eventually you're most likely going to do or be accused of something that you can't get out of. Whether you're innocent of that crime or not, they are going to throw the book at you. They're going to list off every crime you've ever committed as proof because there's no way that you didn't do this particular crime when you did all the others. You unintentionally put yourself in a position where you're guilty until proven innocent, and they will also consider all of that when you're sentenced. They build careers off of the lower class on purpose because they know that the reason you are committing crimes is because you are without, meaning that you can't afford a lawyer. That's why they let everything build up so that you can't get out. I just want to encourage everyone to do the right thing, even if it's difficult. Trying is always a start. It'll be a little bit easier the more you go.